a classy spark of quotes and true stories for seniors. Hello everyone, today we're going to talk about the sweet, yet deadly temptation we face on the threshold of twilight. I would like to learn a profound lesson from the true story of the flower snake trap. I sincerely hope that this will be a time to raise awareness, especially among seniors, to protect their precious lives and property. The story I'm going to tell you today is the tragic story of 67-year-old Park Sun-ho. This story goes beyond just one individual's unfortunate experience. It vividly illustrates the real threats many seniors in our society face. Mr. Park Sun-ho was a man who lived faithfully throughout his life, starting from his youth. In particular, the elderly couple's spouse achieved great success in the restaurant business with her outstanding skills. The elderly couple accumulated considerable wealth that will allow them to enjoy a comfortable retirement. My spouse, with his outstanding management skills and sincerity, started a small restaurant and expanded it into a nationwide chain, literally building his wealth with his bare hands. Despite the numerous hardships and difficulties along the way, the two of them relied on each other, encouraged each other, and persevered. The elderly couple built a happy family, deeply dependent on each other, not only materially, but also spiritually. Their children also grew up, greatly influenced by their parents' harmonious relationship, and they were always praised as a model couple by those around them. The old man's later years were truly peaceful and comfortable, but the happiness didn't last long. One day my spouse suddenly passed away from pancreatic cancer. It was shocking news. Even while battling illness, the spouse cared for the elderly and their family until the very end. And the elderly never left his spouse's side for even a moment. Devotion. But in the end, fate separated the two. The sudden death of his beloved spouse, whom he had spent his entire life with, brought immeasurable sorrow and disappointment to Mr. Park Sun-ho. The old man could never fill the void left by his spouse. Throughout the house, in every place, his wife's hands touched. He felt his traces, and this made his heart ache even more. Despite leaving behind a vast legacy, the elder's heart was filled with emptiness and loneliness. The children often visited the elderly person to keep them company. But the loneliness caused by the absence of a spouse weighed heavily on the elderly person's heart, like a deep hole that nothing could fill. The old man seemed to have lost the meaning of life and spent each day listlessly. He couldn't eat properly, couldn't sleep properly, and barely did any outdoor activities. I increasingly avoided contact with friends and spent more time isolating myself. At that time, a trot craze began to blow across the country. Trot music programs were broadcasting every day, recording high viewership ratings, and trot music was playing on the streets. The elderly person saw neighbors and friends gathering in small groups to attend trot concerts and to relieve boredom by dancing enthusiastically at karaoke bars. I wasn't keen on it at first. For the elderly, who were immersed in sadness and lethargy, lively music and noisy places felt rather painful. But with the earnest advice of his friends, a small hope began to blossom. In the old man's heart, this can't go on. I need to regain my vitality. The old man took courage and began to walk. At first I was hesitant, but the heat of the concert hall, the dazzling lights of the nightclub, and the cozy atmosphere of the karaoke bar made me forget my old man's sorrow for a moment. The elderly man found his first smile in a long time. As he sang along and swayed his body with strangers, you felt as if you had regained your vitality in life, and the burden on your shoulders seemed to be lifted a little. Right there, a captivating young woman who seemed to glow in the darkness caught Mr. Park Sun-ho's eye. She was the center of attention for her outstanding looks and stylish attire. The old man felt a strange charm from the woman, along with a long-forgotten thrill. She captivated the old man's heart so much that he felt as if he had returned to his youth. The woman approached the old man and spoke to him, skillfully approaching him with a familiarity, as if he had been waiting for a long time for a relationship. The heart of the old man, who had been weary of loneliness, began to slowly open to her. The woman pretended to empathize with the old man's pain and offered words of comfort. By listening intently to the old man's story, she built deep trust. She pretended to understand how difficult it must have been for the old man to lose his spouse, and melted his heart with a few kind words. It seemed as if he was a savior who appeared for Mr. Park Soon-ho. When the old man was with her, his loneliness disappeared, and he felt a renewed energy. She constantly praised and showed affection to the elderly person, helping them regain their confidence. The old man thought she was a ray of light in his life. But this was precisely the flower snake's elaborate strategy. Scammers target lonely and vulnerable seniors, gaining their trust through emotional appeals before extorting money. Their methods are very diverse and cunning. At first, ask for a small amount of money and see how the elderly person reacts. It's like a test, starting with a small amount to understand the senior's financial strengths and psychological weaknesses. My mother suddenly fell ill and needs urgent medical expenses. If you could lend me just a few days, I'll pay you back right away. My business is struggling, so if you could help me out for a little while, I'll definitely pay you back. I'm really having a hard time, so I only have my brother. I am at the point where I have to give up my studies because I don't have enough money to pay tuition. He constantly creates desperate and heartbreaking stories, such as, if it's not you, there's really no one who can help me. These stories pique the elderly's sympathy and make them feel as if they are her only savior. Mr. Park Sun-ho was no exception. She first asked to borrow several 100,000 won, then several million won. The old man was blinded by love and could not ignore her earnest plea. When I saw her tears, I felt as if my own daughter or granddaughter was in trouble, and I was willing to give her money. The old man felt satisfied with the very fact that he could help her. As time passed, her demands became more daring. Brother, this time there's something really big. Someone I know told me about a really good investment opportunity. If you invest here, you can double or triple your money. I'm telling you this especially for you, my brother. If you miss this opportunity, you will really regret it, he said, and began to ask for a large sum of money that the old man had saved as an investment. She inflated investment returns and deceived the elderly by selling the names of celebrities and experts. Sometimes they target the elderly's assets under various pretexts, such as business funds and sometimes real estate investment. The old man trusted her completely, and falling for her sweet whispers, gave her his precious possessions, little by little, and later, a large sum at once. She constantly sucked up the old man's wealth, like a money-printing machine. The old man could not refuse her request. He was afraid that if he didn't give her money, she would leave him. Amidst a mixture of love and anxiety, the old man became increasingly dependent on her. In the end, Mr. Park Soon-ho's enormous inheritance was squandered in an instant by her hands. Real estate is being sold. Savings are being depleted, and stocks are becoming worthless too late that everything was a lie. The old man had already lost everything. After taking all the old man's money, she disappeared without a trace. The elderly man stopped eating and drinking due to shock, and his health deteriorated rapidly. You are in a state of greater despair than when you lost your spouse. The discovery that what he believed to be love was ultimately an elaborate fraud left a deep scar on the old man's heart. Betrayal, self-loathing, and distrust of the world overwhelmed the old man. The elderly man suffered from severe depression
to this
incident and even developed social phobia, refusing to meet people at all. It seemed as if he had completely lost hope in life. Like this, the methods of the snakes are becoming sophisticated by the day. In the past, they were mainly targeting retirement benefits, but recently they have been targeting elderly, people in rural areas who feel lonely, elderly people who lack attention from their families, and even elderly people with dementia. They exploit the psychological vulnerabilities of older people to get what they want. They approach the victim in a friendly manner, saying, "I like older people," and then stole 20 million won in 2 weeks. There was also a case where they stole 9 billion won worth of assets after registering their marriage to an 83-year-old wealthy man suffering from dementia. This woman deliberately approached the elderly man and induced him to register his marriage. Then, taking advantage of his impaired judgment due to dementia, she transferred the property to her own name. Ultimately, she divorced him and stole all of his assets. The elderly victim, who found out too late that he had been scammed, was so enraged that he died from shock, tragically ending up dead. These cases clearly demonstrate the cruelty and meticulousness of the snakes. There are also frequent instances of fraud that lure investors into investing by promising
After
high
building
interest relationships with religious groups or clubs. Elderly people often fall prey to scammers in places where they gather for pure faith and fellowship. They sometimes exploit the religious beliefs and sense of community of the elderly by presenting plausible excuses such as a heaven-given opportunity or a revelation from God, even going so far as to cause minor traffic accidents, and then charge exorbitant repair costs. They approach elderly drivers with kindness and reassurance, then ask for a much higher amount than is actually paid, or inflate the cost. By adding unnecessary repair items, elderly drivers often become confused and overwhelmed during the accident process and end up giving in to the other party's demands. Recently, since the abolition of the adultery law, there has been an increase in cases of women, called ticket women, taking financial advantage of the elderly. They approach older people through online chat or matchmaking apps and often work in adult entertainment establishments. At first, they seem to be trying to keep the elderly company and alleviate their loneliness. But in the end, they are mostly trying to approach them for money. Elderly people who are trying to start a relationship with pure heart, sweet talk, and end up buying expensive gifts or supporting their entertainment and living expenses, which leads to great losses. They often call the elderly people by titles like Oppa or Honey and act as if they are lovers. But they often have relationships with other men behind their backs and extort money, showing a double standard. Elderly people learn of this fact too late and suffer both psychological shock and financial damage. So how can seniors avoid falling into these snake traps? The most important thing is alertness. And this alertness must lead to concrete action plans. First, always be suspicious of excessive hospitality from strangers. No matter how friendly you may be, you should avoid giving your heart away or revealing personal information to someone you meet time. In particular, you should never carelessly discuss sensitive information, such as your property or family relationships. Be especially cautious when a stranger offers you excessive compliments, such as, "You look really cool," "You look young," or "You seem to have a lot of money." Praise is nice to hear, but it takes wisdom to discern the hidden intentions behind it. Second, you should absolutely avoid monetary transactions, especially if someone asks you to lend them money or to invest. You should firmly refuse, no matter how close they seem. Money has the terrible power to turn friends into enemies and lovers into strangers. If your partner continues to ask for money, you should recognize that the relationship is already unhealthy. If you have difficulty making a decision, you should definitely consult with a family member, a trusted acquaintance, or a professional. There are so many cases where people suffer alone and make irreversible choices. Third, investment proposals that promise high returns are very likely scams. While lures like principal guaranteed, high returns, jackpot may sound tempting, most scams target seniors' precious assets. Legitimate investments don't guarantee high returns and always involve risk. Anything that says you can get high returns without taking any risk is 100% a scam. When receiving an investment proposal, you should always check the credibility of the institution and seek advice from a financial professional. Even if it's a recommendation from a friend or acquaintance, you shouldn't blindly believe it. Fourth, if you suspect fraud, you must immediately report it to the police. The longer you delay, the greater the damage can be, and the greater the chance that the perpetrator will escape or evidence will be destroyed. Don't hesitate to call 112 or the nearest police station for help. The police are there to protect your valuable property. It is also very important to be honest with your family about the situation and ask for their help. There are many cases where you suffer greater damage when you try to solve the problem on your own. Love is a truly beautiful feeling. New relationships, especially those that come during the twilight years, can be a great source of vitality in life. Love that comes after a long period of loneliness will feel more precious than anything else. But unfortunately, there are people in the world who pretend to be pure, love and seek to take other people's property. They exploit the loneliness and innocence of the elderly to fill their bellies. While romance in the twilight years is beautiful and precious in itself, we must keep in mind that if we are not careful, it can easily lead to an irreversible tragedy like that of Mr. Park Soon-ho. The more a relationship comes in the twilight of life, the more carefully you must judge it and deeply consider the other person's sincerity. Hasty judgments can lead to irreversible regrets. Dear friends, I sincerely hope that through today's story, all seniors dreaming of a twilight romance will make wise decisions and protect their precious lives and assets. No matter how great your loneliness, you must not succumb to the temptation of a stranger. If you know of an elderly person who has suffered from this type of damage, please actively help them and share information for prevention. If we all pay attention to one another and pool our wisdom, we can fully prevent these unfortunate losses. We sincerely hope that our seniors will enjoy a healthy and happy retirement. If you feel that Mr. Park Sun-ho's story today has touched your heart, please subscribe and like. And I earnestly request that you leave many comforting comments for Mr. Park Sun-ho. A classy spark of quotes and true stories for seniors. See you next time. Thank you.